the movement of the boat that carried Nolan Wells to Horn Island over the 4th of July weekend.
Count them. Nobody has been charged in Nolan Wells's death. Police have not named a suspect. And yet the young men who were on that boat have attorneys. One of those attorneys has sent a cease-and-desist letter. The family has retained Ben Crump and hired its own forensic experts. That looks like a case that is deep into litigation. It is not. There is no case yet. So we are going to walk the calendar forward and mark the exact point where this stopped being an investigation and became a legal fight. Because that point is not the day Nolan Wells died. It is later, and it has almost nothing to do with the sheriff. Set the date with us, July 4th, 2026, Horn Island, Mississippi. According to CNN and Jelly Locks, an 18-year-old named Nolan Wells went out on a boat trip that day. He went with friends. He never came home. His body was recovered on July 6. But between those two facts, the trip and the recovery, there is a window, and that window is the whole case. So let's walk it hour by hour, or, where the record allows, minute by minute. Here's what the official timeline actually contains. GPS data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, obtained by CBS News, shows the boat left Horn Island at approximately 4:31 p.m. That's the departure. It is on the record, from a state agency, and CBS News has seen it. Now back up. Before the boat left, there was a sighting. The last one the record can verify. When was it? According to a report from the United Cajun Navy, obtained by TMZ, that last verified sighting falls between 3:23 p.m. and 4:27 p.m. That's a window of just over an hour. And somewhere inside that window, someone saw Nolan Wells. The report describes it as independently verified, meaning an account investigators could check. Now do the math with us. The latest possible sighting is 4:27. The boat leaves at 4:31. 4 minutes. 4 minutes between the last moment this case can prove Nolan Wells was alive and the moment that boat was moving away from Horn Island. 4 minutes. We don't know what happened in those 4 minutes. The record doesn't tell us. The GPS data tells us the boat moved. The United Cajun Navy report tells us the sighting window closed. But what happened in between? Who was where? Who said what? Whether Nolan Wells was already in trouble by 4:27? That is not in the public record. And that silence is the point. Because after 4:31, the official timeline goes quiet. According to CNN and Locks, Nolan Wells was reported missing, and his body was recovered on July 6. 2 days. That's the next fact we have. A body, recovered, 2 days after the boat left the island. Now here's where the timeline stops being clean. The family commissioned its own independent autopsy. According to ABC News and CNN, it came back on July 22 and 23, more than a week before the states would be completed, with a cause and manner of death, undetermined pending investigation. Read that again? Undetermined, pending investigation. That's the family's own expert, and even that expert could not say what killed Nolan Wells. Not yet, not with the information available. Then the official autopsy. According to WLBT, Mississippi's state autopsy was completed by July 31st. Its results have not been made public. They are going to a grand jury. Not to the public, not to the press. A grand jury. So let's count what we actually know, from sourced records. A boat trip on July 4th. A departure at 4:31 p.m. A last verified sighting sometime between 3:23 and 4:27. A body recovered 2 days later. An independent autopsy that came back undetermined. A state autopsy that is sealed and headed to a grand jury. That's the official timeline. That's all of it. And according to NOLA.com, CNN, and NPR, no one has been charged. No suspect has been named. The case remains under investigation by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. So here's what you're left with. An 18-year-old who went on a boat trip with friends and ended up dead. A timeline with a 4-minute hole at its center. 2 autopsies that together tell you almost nothing. And an investigation that is still open, still quiet, still unresolved. That hole, the 4 minutes between the last verified sighting and the boat leaving the island, is where this case stopped being just an investigation. It is where the story changed. Because into that hole, someone dropped a recording. And according to the attorney for one of the young men on that boat, That recording is not what it sounds like. Not even close. So let's set that gap on a table. On one side, the GPS data. According to CBS News, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources shows the boat left Horn Island at 4:31 p.m. On the other side, the last verified sighting. According to the United Cajun Navy report, Nolan Wells was last independently seen somewhere between 3:23 and 4:27. Not at 4:27, somewhere. That means the hole we keep talking about is not a fixed 4 minutes. It's anywhere from 4 minutes to more than an hour. And in that uncertainty, the case begins to warp. Because here's what we know about that window. Nothing. No official source has put Nolan Wells anywhere after that sighting. No one has said what he was doing, who he was with, whether he was okay. According to NOLA.com, CNN, and NPR, no one has been charged. The case remains under investigation. And Mississippi officials have a message for us, the people watching from the outside. They have urged the public not to rush to conclusions. They have warned that social media speculation could hinder the investigation. That's official, from Newsweek, via Mississippi officials. But you've seen the speculation. It fills the gap anyway. According to Mississippi Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell, a purported toxicology report that started circulating online is fraudulent. Not inaccurate. Fraudulent. Someone made it up. Someone looked at that gap and decided to fill it with a forgery, and a state official had to spend his own credibility taking it back out. That's what the gap does. It doesn't stay empty. It gets occupied. And the people being occupied are the ones who were on that boat. According to WWL, TheGrio and ABC News, friends who were on the trip have reported death threats and online harassment. The FBI is investigating those threats, according to LiveNOW from Fox. So while the rest of us argue about what happened, the witnesses are hiding from what's happening to them. That's why they have lawyers. Not because they've been charged, not because they've been named suspects, because the gap has turned them into targets. And that's where the cease-and-desist letter comes in. According to WWL, TheGrio, and ABC News, one friend's attorney has sent one over statements made about him online. Let's be clear what that is. A cease and desist is a demand. It says stop. It does not prove innocence. It does not prove guilt. It means an attorney is saying, you are harming my client, and the consequences are coming. For Bart Edmiston Jr., that attorney is Russell Latino. On NewsNation, Latino told Chris Cuomo that the harm is coming from a specific place, an enhanced recording circulating on social media. Latino called the recording doctored audio paired with a fake transcript. But the engineer who made it disagrees. Janetta Brantley told Unheard Voices magazine she hasn't received a cease and desist, and she will not retract her work. Her words, I didn't doctor anything. So now you have two opposing claims sitting inside that same gap. The lawyer says the recording is fake, the engineer says it's real, and the family has hired forensic audio experts to find out which one is true. According to TMZ, Ben Crump confirmed that. Forensic experts! On an audio file! That's how far this gap has reached. It's not just a missing timeline anymore. It's a contested piece of evidence. So we have to ask ourselves, who gets to tell us what happened in those unverified minutes? The lawyers? The engineers? The anonymous commenters? No. According to WLBT, the official autopsy results are going to a grand jury, not to us. So while the recording war plays out in public, the decision makers are meeting in private, and they have a question on the table. If the recording is fake, who made it? If it's real, what does it actually show? That question is why the lawyers are here, and it's why the next piece of evidence might not stay sealed for long. But before the grand jury gets that file, let's stop and listen to what the actual voices have said, because that's the other part of this case that's easy to lose. We've been reading about the timeline, the 4:31 p.m. departure from Horn Island, according to GPS data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, obtained by CBS News. The last independently verified sighting, per the United Cajun Navy report, between 3:23 and 4:27. We've seen the map. We know the distances. But the gap between those numbers belongs to people, and those people have been talking. Here's the strange part. The people officially involved in this case have said remarkably little. Mississippi officials have urged the public not to rush to conclusions, according to Newsweek. That's a statement about the investigation's pace, not its findings. They've warned that social media speculation could hinder the investigation. That is a warning, not a revelation. It tells us they're watching the commentary. It doesn't tell us what they know. Then there's the state's public safety commissioner, Sean Tindell. He went further. According to WLBT, Tindell warned that a purported toxicology report circulating online is fraudulent. That's a direct rebuttal of a specific piece of evidence you might have seen in your feed. If you saw it, he's telling you it's fake. That's not a theory from a defense lawyer. That's the state's top public safety official using his platform to kill a rumor. That tells you how much misinformation is out there. It also tells you the state is paying attention to what you're seeing, and they feel the need to correct it. But the most significant silence comes from the autopsy room. According to WLBT, the official Mississippi State autopsy was completed by 31 July 2026. Completed, not released, not summarized. The results have not been made public, and they are going to a grand jury. That's a promise, not a disclosure. It means the official answer exists. It's sitting in a file somewhere, and we don't get to see it yet. What we do have is the other report, the independent autopsy, commissioned by the family. According to ABC News and CNN, it returned a cause and manner of death of undetermined pending investigation. Let's sit with those words. Undetermined, pending. That's a professional way of saying the outside experts couldn't finish the job. They needed more information. They didn't find enough to say what happened. That's not a conclusion. It's a hold, and it sits at the center of this case like a locked door. Now compare the two. The family's experts say undetermined pending investigation. The state says nothing, but the results are grand jury bound. The officials say don't rush. The commissioner says the toxicology report is fake. So the question becomes, what are they trying to protect? And I don't mean protect in a sinister way. I mean protect the investigation, the grand jury, the integrity of whatever they're building. Because in a case like this, leaking the wrong fact at the wrong time doesn't just ruin a prosecution, it ruins a life. And it ruins the chance for Nolan's family to get the one thing they desperately want, which is an answer that holds up. And that brings us back to the recording. The enhanced audio. The one Russell Latino says is doctored. The one Janetta Brantley says she didn't doctor. The one the family has hired forensic experts to examine. You've heard the lawyer's side. You've heard the engineer's side. But what about the state's side? Remember, the FBI is investigating threats against the witnesses. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department is running the death investigation. They have the official autopsy. They have the grand jury. And they have been unwilling to say almost anything publicly. So let's compile what they haven't said. They haven't said the recording is fake. They haven't said it's real. They haven't said the toxicology report is fake beyond the commissioner's comment. They haven't said who was on the boat. They haven't said what time Nolan was last seen by the people who were with him. The only verified timeline we have comes from GPS. And the only verified sighting we have comes from a third-party search organization, not from law enforcement. That's an information vacuum with official fingerprints all over it. And in that vacuum, the narratives collapse into each other. The family's attorney, Ben Crump, says they've hired forensic experts. The witness's attorney, Russell Latino, says the main piece of social media evidence against his client is a fabrication. The engineer says she's being attacked for doing her job. The state says everything is under investigation, and nobody has been charged. Nobody has been named. Under Mississippi law, as reported across NOLA, COM, CNN, and NPR, the case remains under investigation by both the Sheriff's Department and the FBI. So here's where we are. We have an 18-year-old who vanished on a 4th of July boat trip. We have a body recovered 2 days later, per the timeline from CNN and WOX. We have the official autopsy going to a grand jury. We have an independent autopsy that says undetermined. We have a recording that's either a smoking gun or a forgery. We have witnesses under FBI protection from death threats. And we have a state commissioner actively debunking evidence you may have believed. Every one of those people is telling a story. The official story is caution. The family's story is urgency. The witness's story is defense. And your story, the viewer's story, is that you are being asked to hold all of these contradictions in your head at once. That's not a comfortable place, but it's the honest one, because the next piece of this case will not come from a comment section. It will come from one of two places: the grand jury's decision or that forensic audio analysis. And that's the piece we're not allowed to see yet. Let's walk through what could actually settle this. Not what the comment sections want, what the evidence could give us. Start with the audio. The family's attorney, Ben Crump, told TMZ they have hired forensic audio experts to examine that recording. Notice the word experts, plural, not one person listening on a laptop. And according to ABC News and CNN, the independent autopsy they commissioned came back with a cause and manner of death of undetermined pending investigation. That word, pending, is doing a lot of work. It means the examination could not resolve the question on the material it had. Now the GPS. That's the hardest data we have. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources shared it with CBS News. The boat left Horn Island at approximately 4:31 p.m. That's not a guess. That's a satellite record. And the United Cajun Navy report, obtained by TMZ, places Nolan's last independently verified sighting between 3:23 p.m. and 4:27 p.m. So there's a window. The boat left at 4:31. He was last seen by an independent source no later than 4:27. That's 4 minutes. 4 minutes between the last time someone who wasn't on that boat saw him and the moment the boat started moving. What happened in those 4 minutes? That's a question only the people on the boat can answer, and they're not talking publicly. Then there's the autopsy. The official one. Mississippi state officials completed it by 31 July, according to WLBT. The results have not been made public. They're going to a grand jury. That's the single most important piece of paper in this case, and we can't see it. The independent autopsy says undetermined. The official autopsy could say something completely different, or it could say the same thing. We don't know, and it is worth resisting the temptation to read the silence as a signal. Sending results to a grand jury is a procedural route, not a verdict, and grand juries also see cases that end without any charge at all. According to CNN and NPR, no one has been charged. The case remains under investigation by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. Now the grand jury. This is where the pieces come together. A grand jury doesn't decide guilt. It decides whether there's enough evidence to charge someone. They'll see the official autopsy. They'll see the GPS data. They'll see the witness statements. They'll see that recording, the one the witness's attorney, Russell Latino, called doctored audio paired with a fake transcript on NewsNation. And they'll hear from the audio engineer, Janetta Brantley, who told Unheard Voices magazine she didn't doctor anything and will not retract her work. Here's the tension. The state has all of this, and they're still not charging anyone. They're still not clearing anyone. Mississippi officials have urged the public not to rush to conclusions, according to Newsweek. And Commissioner Sean Tindell warned that a purported toxicology report circulating online is fraudulent. The state is actively correcting the public record, but they're not correcting the case record. So what closes this? Not a comment section, not a viral post. It closes when the grand jury either issues an indictment or declines to. That's the fork in the road. And until that happens, every piece of evidence we've discussed is just a fragment. The phone, the GPS, the autopsy, the recording. They're all in the hands of people who are not telling us what they know. The witnesses have lawyers, the family has lawyers, the state has a sealed report. And you and I are left with the only thing they've all confirmed. An 18-year-old went on a boat trip and didn't come home. But here's the thing about those witnesses. They've retained attorneys. The FBI is investigating threats made against them, according to LiveNOW from Fox, and it is worth being exact about that, because the distinction gets lost constantly online. The FBI is not investigating them. It is investigating the people threatening them. And one friend's attorney has already sent a cease-and-desist letter over online statements. That is what it looks like when witnesses in an open case become targets themselves. That's the question we're all circling. And here's what the legal landscape actually tells us, piece by piece. First, the cease-and-desist letter. You've probably seen people online treating it like a confession. It's not. According to the family's attorney, The letter was sent over statements made about his client online. That's it. A cease and desist is a demand to stop. It's not an accusation. It's not evidence. It's a lawyer saying, "You're saying things about my client that he disputes and we'd like you to stop." People send them every day over business disputes, neighbor feuds, online reviews. The fact that one was sent here tells you the friend's attorney is paying attention. That's all it tells you. Second, the lawyers themselves. The young men on the trip have retained attorneys, and we've talked about why that's not an admission. But let's be precise about what it does signal. And precise is the word, because this is where most of the commentary goes wrong. They have not been charged. Police have not named a suspect. What the FBI has confirmed, according to LiveNOW from Fox, is that it is investigating threats made against these young men. Being the subject of threats is not the same as being the subject of a case, and those two ideas have been collapsed into one by almost everybody discussing this. When you are a witness in an open death investigation and strangers are threatening you, you get a lawyer. That is the whole explanation. Now, what happens next? The timeline is actually fairly clear, even if the outcome isn't. The official autopsy is complete. Its results are going to a grand jury, according to WLBT. The independent autopsy commissioned by the family returned a cause and manner of death of undetermined pending investigation, as CNN and ABC News reported in late July, and the family's attorney, Ben Crump, told TMZ that forensic audio experts are examining that recording. So the pieces are all in motion. The question is when the grand jury convenes. And here's where we have to be honest with ourselves. Grand juries are secret. We may not learn what was presented. We may only learn the outcome. An indictment, or a decision not to indict. And if there's no indictment, the case doesn't just vanish. It goes back to being what it is right now, an open investigation with no named suspect. The FBI doesn't close cases just because a grand jury declines. They keep working. They keep interviewing. They keep building. But here's the other possibility, the one nobody wants to say out loud. What if the grand jury sees everything and still can't reach a conclusion? What if the autopsy is inconclusive? What if the recording is ruled inadmissible? What if the GPS data doesn't line up with the witness statements? Then we're left with what we have now, an open case, a grieving family, and a community that's been told not to rush to judgment by Mississippi officials, but has been given almost nothing to wait for. That's the hardest part of this case. Not the mystery, the waiting. Because every day that passes without charges, without a named suspect, without a released autopsy, the window for justice gets a little narrower. Not closed, but narrower. And in that waiting, there's a person. Christine Wansley, Nolan's mother. She's the one who's been left to watch her son's death become a spectacle. She's watched strangers analyze his last hours like a puzzle. She's watched the recording, the GPS data, the timelines, the theories, and she's still waiting for the one thing no grand jury can give her, her son. We have spent this whole video looking at paperwork, the boat, the recording, the autopsies, the letters. But at the center of all of it is an 18-year-old who went to Horn Island on the 4th of July and didn't come home. The people who were with him have lawyers. The people running the investigation are saying almost nothing, and the people watching are waiting. The next chapter won't come from a social media post. It'll come from a courtroom, or a grand jury room, or an investigator's notebook. And when it does, we'll be here. Because this case isn't over. It hasn't even really started. And the only thing we can do is keep asking the question that no one in authority will answer yet. What really happened on that boat?